Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. Today's topic is non-financial aspect of credit risk assessment. This is part of a series of webinars that we organize for credit officers and managers of NNB Bank, Nepal. My name is Phuong, together with Dr. Venkatesh. We will be your moderators today. In this webinar format, we would like to start with a few house rules. During the webinar, all attendees' video and audio are muted. Only speaker audio will be on. If you have any question, please type in the Q&A box. The speaker will answer your question after he finishes his talk. Slide deck and recordings of this webinar will be made available to all attendees. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Venkatesh to deliver the opening remarks.
A very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the second webinar in this series. As you can see, the webinars follow the program structure. So in the first webinar, we focused on the financial aspects of risk assessment, specifically on the cash flows. We are now into the second theme of the program, which is about non-financial aspects of credit assessment. And in this webinar, we will be focusing on several non-financial aspects in the company of a very accomplished speaker and credit rating agency senior manager. I have sent an email message to all of you, and I will meet you in groups tomorrow morning starting 8 a.m. Nepal time. So each group will meet with me for about 15 minutes. And I have also highlighted the agenda for the meeting tomorrow. So with those few words, let me extend a warm welcome to all of you again and hand the floor back to Dr. Phuong. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Venkatesh. Yeah, thank you. Today, we are very honored to have our guest speaker, Dr. Syed Mamun, FCMA, CSRS. He works as Deputy CEO in Credit Rating Information and Services Limited, CRISL, the first ever and premier rating company in Bangladesh, established in 1995. He is also serving as Independent Director and Chairman of Audit and Finance Committee, Board of Directors, Northwest Power Generation Company Limited, the largest state-owned power generation company in Bangladesh. The other current engagement he has is finance consultant for Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, in the Dhaka Metro Rail project. Dr. Mamun earned his PhD in finance from the School of Management, the Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand. He completed his BBA and MBA from the Department of Accounting and Information System, University of Dhaka. Dr. Mamun is a certified professional cost and management accountant and fellow member, FCMA, of the Institute of Cost and Management Accountants of Bangladesh, and also a certified sustainable reporting specialist, CSRS, the Institute of Certified Sustainability Practitioners, Indonesia. Dr. Mamun has more than 14 years of professional experience in the areas of finance, accounting, and business strategy. Especially, he engaged with CRISL for more than 10 years with different capacity, including industry analyst, member of rating committee, and director of CRISL School of Finance. In addition, he worked as finance consultant of different projects, including the International Financial Corporation, IFC, World Bank, Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, SNB Netherlands Development Organization, and the United Nations Capital Development Fund. He teaches finance and accounting courses in different reputed local and international institutions, including the Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand, University of Uttara, Malaysia, Institute of Business Administration of University of Dhaka, School of Business of North-South University, Business School of Prague University, and Islamic Bank Training and Research Academy. His research interests focus on corporate governance, corporates and finance strategy, fintech, intellectual capital, family business, and sustainability. He has more than 30 research articles published in peer-reviewed national and international preferred journals. His book titled International Corporate Governance in an Emerging Economy, Impact on the Performance of Financial Institutions in Bangladesh, published in Germany. We are very honored to have Dr. Mamun to join our webinar as speaker today. Dear Dr. Mamun, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the very generous introduction, in fact. So, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, let me. Okay, disable. Okay, like, could you please allow me to share the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Perfect.
thank you. Thank you for your very kind and generous introduction. And thank you, Professor Dr. Venkatesh, for giving me the opportunity to share my understanding with a very rich audience from Nepal. Good morning to all from Nepal. So we will carry on the next 90 minutes about our our discussion about the same topic, that non-financial aspects in the credit risk management. And after the discussion, if you have any questions, as it has been mentioned by the moderator, that if you have any questions after discussion, the next 30 minutes, we will talk about the discussion. Even I'm very flexible. If you have more questions, I'll accommodate. So now let's proceed on our discussion. Okay, we will carry on our discussion with this flow. As a credit risk and credit risk assessment, then we will try to cover framework of the credit risk assessment, then how different factors are interplaying to affect the credit risks, and then the few case studies we try to look into how the credit score has been determined based on that credit risk, and then we try to draw summary and conclusion note. Then okay, sorry for the slide showing delays. Like, let's talk about the what does the credit risk mean. Let's say, think about a supercut salon, which is a top brand in Bangladesh. In fact, it needs a working capital to pay salary during this pandemic. Or think about a cement company which would like to go for expansion its project. And think about as a Reliance Power, which recently would like to set up a power plant in Bangladesh. That's a 1 billion power plant. So when the business needs the fund, then one of the options, as we know that there are two options, also debt financing and the equity financing. So if they would like to go for the debt financing, then they look for the lender, and lender come up with the concern. The lender has a concern that if we give the money to the business entities, then can they or will they repay the loan? That is including interest. That is the basic concern of the lenders. So, and that is called the credit risk. Means there is any certainty, or the level of the uncertainty of the borrowers to repay the loan, including its principals and interest. So the credit risks, will or can borrower repay the loan? We can briefly define in that way. So credit risks or the default risks. So here, though to some extent these two are defined in a different way, here we will use these two terminologies as a synonymous. That is, here credit risk means the willingness and the capability of the borrowers to repay, and the default risks here, which is just as a counterparty's assessment, that is to what extent there is a chances that the borrower will not be able to pay. That's why we are using these two terminology as an interchangeably, and it depends on the capability and willingness of the borrower. Means whether the borrower in future will have the capability to repay the loan. And second question, particularly this is significantly related in the emerging economy, that the willingness, whether they really want to give back the loan, because of the very high known like NPL shows that many borrowers do not have actually the willingness for repay the loan. So combining these two, we can say the credit worthiness of the borrowers, and which is ultimately define the credit risk. Means chances of getting back the loan from the borrowers. And why it is very important to assess the credit risk? Because based on that, how the loan will be structured is determined. Means lender determine that what will be the structure, terms and conditions, and the covenants will be the loan. And what will be the price of the loan? Means what will be the charges, like a rate of interest. And here we can find that there are mainly two parties in the debt market. One is a lender, another is a borrower. So lender give the fund to the borrower with the expectation that borrower will repay the loan, and the repayment tendency or the repayment capability of the borrower suffers from some information asymmetry problem. How can lender can know about the borrower's capability and willingness? Lenders need the information about the borrower, which borrower has in private information. If borrower make it available to the lenders, then lenders can know. That means lender wants to get the information which borrowers may not have. Let me show in another aspect in this respect. Suppose I'm a borrower. If lender tells me, do you have the capability and the willingness to repay? I definitely say yes, I will. So if they ask me next question how, I'll show all the rosy picture which will reflect that I will be capable as well as willing. I have the willingness that to repay the loan to the lenders. But will it be the credible information? Will I give all that as a borrower, potential borrower or existing borrower? Will I be in a very good position to share all the information, all material information? May not be. And this problem is called the asymmetry, information asymmetry problem. And due to the information asymmetry problem, it becomes difficult for the lender to analyze my willingness and the capability to repay the loan. And if they cannot analyze my willingness, means my credit risks, my credit worthiness, then it will be difficult for him to set appropriate loan structure, means terms and condition, as well as price, means the loan price can be underpricing or the overpricing, and regulations can be like covenant, or the structure can be not optimum. So then what is the solution in these cases of this information asymmetry problem? Then as the borrower's credit, like repayment capability depends on his credit worthiness, then how unbiasedly the credit risk can be assessed. And the process is called that external credit rating. Though internal credit rating can be also happen, which has been happened, but the external and independent credit rating put in a place to assess the credit risks independently and provide the information to both borrowers and the lenders, and based on which the loan price and the loan structure can be determined more appropriate. And there are some international rating agencies which are called top three, so Moody's, Standard & Poor, and the Fitch. And so far I know that Fitch has been appointed by the Nepal in the January 2020 for their country risk assessment and the sovereign rating. And these are the few examples of the domestic credit rating agencies in South Asia. And as you all know that there are two rating agencies in the Nepal, ICRA Nepal and CRNL. And these are the snapshot of the websites. You may also explore these. And by assessing the credit risks, what do? They communicate the information with this letter grade and also report, detailed report. This a letter grade like is a grade of a academic program. Like if we say is an A, B, C, then what we say? A means best performer, B means moderate, C is a poor performer. So similarly, this is the international rating scales, and domestic rating companies adopt in their own format. Like they may go for the Fitch ratings, and they may go for that Standard Poor and Moody's, or they may come up with their own rating. So this is nothing but a symbol. But the symbol carries a value that if any company gets the rating above BBB minus, it is treated as an investment grade. But if anyone get, like we are talking about the Premier Cement, if they get as a BBB minus, means it is marginally investment grade. But if it gets as a AAA, there is a very high capability for their repayment. That means credit rating or credit grade or the score has a negative relationship with a credit risk. Means high credit rating, low credit risk. So interestingly, that almost in the US bond market, like almost 7 trillion bond is associated with the BBB, and it is almost including bond and the term loan. But interestingly, in the bond market, like around 54% bond have the BBB. So in the pandemic situation, it becomes a great concern for the US economy as well, which shows that most of the companies' credit risk is marginally above to the investment grade. So this is the implication of the credit rating, by which we can understand that how risky the lender putting the money in the basket of the borrowers. So the concluding remark up to our discussions, we can say is that credit rating is the measure of credit risk. Means by credit rating, we measure the level of the credit riskiness of a particular loan. Means how much the borrower will be capable to repay. And in one word, if Premier Bank rating is AAA, means as a lender, I'll be in a very comfortable position to lend the money with the expectation that the Premier Cement has a very high chances to get back the loan. But if we found that Reliance Power has a rating as a BBB or marginally BBB, okay, it has that capability, but the credit risk is high. It has the lesser capability to repay the loan compared to the cement company. On the other hand, if we found that as that below BBB credit rating of any particular, like as in supercar, is a small tiny like SME. So in that cases, we'll find that there is a higher risk in that cases for getting back the loan. And these are the typical steps, like how the credit rating happen. I just go for the quick look, like as there is an agreement in between the borrower and the independent assessment company, and the fees is bared by the borrower, in fact, because they need to ensure the information or the level of their riskiness to the lender. So these are the typical steps has been followed. And if the borrower thinks that, like after assessing the credit rating, if they're not happy, they found that there is any gap between their expectation and the rating assigned, they can also appeal to the rating committee, which is an independent committee of the analyst, so that unbiased assessment can be determined. And here, one point I want to assure is that, like, this process is captured, or this process has been followed by a credit rating company. So can anyone be the rating company? Like we are talking about in the prior slides, so that there are 2 rating companies in the Nepal. Definitely no. This is the licensed by the regulator, capital market regulator. In Nepal, you probably know that, like the capital market regulator, that Securities Exchange of the Nepal, which has given the license, similar like in Bangladesh as well. So without the license, no one can work as an external and independent credit rating agency. So what is the borrower capability to repay? Now is a question, what are the factors we consider, or big questions we consider to determine what is the borrower's capability to repay, and also what is the borrower's willingness. So in broad sense, the borrower's capability depends on, like, in which country the borrower operates, what is their nature and competitiveness of the borrower's industry, means in which industry it belongs, and what is the business model, and what is the business and the corporate strategy of the borrower, and what is the reporting and accounting strategy of the borrower, and what is the liquidity, solvency, and the profitability, means financial performance, and to what extent the country and the country are industry are exposed to the international market. Like there are some companies which operate in a particular country but are highly sensitive to the international market dynamics. Or is an industry the company belongs is highly sensitive to the international market. For example, in the RNG sector, like in the like top 3 player in the RNG market, or the supplier of the RNG market, is China, Vietnam, and the Bangladesh. And all are suffering acutely at this moment due to the global market fall. So if any company belongs to the RNG sector, so this is a very crucial to what extent the international market is behaving to their product. So which is also a critical factor. Maybe the company is a very efficient, but due to this demand side collapse, the company may lose its capability to repay. And to what extent the borrower is exposed to the international market. Means Dr. individual Mamun? Borrowing company as well as a country. Like as I was mentioning in the country like Bangladesh, which is globally connected, but it's almost 70% is a domestic customer. So even in the great financial recession in 2008, it has been shown that the global economy was down. All global banks and financial institutions are bankrupted in most of the cases. But Bangladeshi financial institutions are doing profit, means there are lesser co-integration with the global economy. It means there is a level of the integration, which also tells us to what extent we will consider the country risk factor. And if we look at here, like I say, in a whole global economy, a domestic economy is the part of the whole global economy. And in industry, there are many industries in a domestic economy. So an industry is a part of a domestic economy. And a business entity or a borrower is a part of the industry. Now, this is a very analytical issue is that. So this is the whole structure, but a particular business entity, like I was talking of the salon or the beauty parlor, to what extent the beauty parlor belongs to a like beauty parlor industry in Bangladesh. It is related with the domestic economy. It is also part of domestic economy, is a part of the global economy. But to what extent it is related with the global economy, is business outcome or is capability of repayment or business outcome, financial performance is related to the global economy, very low. But in the RMG sector, as we mentioned, that very high. But if we think about the cement industry in Bangladesh, it is also related with the behavior of the global economy, but it is moderately, because major of the almost 90% of the consumption production of the cement industry is consumed by the local market, though it depends heavily for the raw material for the international market. So this is the skeleton by which we can develop the big picture about any entity and to find their integration with the domestic economy as well as the cyclicality, in fact, which is mentioned, that to what extent their revenue is related with the ups and downs of the overall industry or domestic economy or the global economy. Now, second point is that what is the willingness of the borrowers to repay? Suppose I'm doing very good business, but due to the culture, like due to the poor legal enforcement system, what we can find that in the emerging economy or the least developed or developing economy, there is a tendency of some borrowers not to repay. So which depends on what is their moral ground, what is their corporate governance system. So their ethical and the moral ground is also a factor, and their track record is also a factor by which their willingness to repay the loan depends. And in that cases, what is the ownership structure, which is a very critical thing. Like if we found the ownership structure, there is a particularly if we find that any socially responsible company is the participating in the ownership structure, then what will be happen? They will have a pressure on the overall company to repay. Similarly, if a company has a major shareholders who have a very good track record for repayment of the loan, or they have the very strong ethical positions, so or moral positions, so that should be a very interesting factor in that cases. And who are in the board of directors? Ultimately, they are the policymakers, and what are their track records? What is their philosophy in their mind? So here, I'm not talking about their sporting track record. Here, the track record of dealing something from the ethical perspectives, that like if I have the capability, I'll repay. Means I'll not take any selfish strategy. So which in fact determines the willingness of the borrowers. And who are in the top management of the company. And similarly, the top management also has very important role to play. Like what are their track record? Like recently, it has been shown that Bangladesh is an overburdened with the NPL. But it has been shown for the last few years that the dividend payment of the bank is very high. Means the company's profit is reducing, but the dividend payment is high. So recently, and during the pandemic time, the Bangladesh Bank has imposed a, so by the way, it reflects the top management tendency to help the shareholders as the shareholder structure is very much concentrated, means only few people are holding the majority of the shareholders. So that's why the major shareholders are getting back the fund by their dividend, by through the cash dividend. So as a result, the further liquidity pressure is on the banks. So when the pandemic started, the regulator were expecting the similar trend. That's why they imposed a restriction that none of the bank can declare the dividend, cash dividend particularly, after more than a certain percentage, if their care is not very healthy, means they have to impose some cap. Why? Because here the track record of the management and the board are not favorable in terms of maintaining the capability of the utilizing the assets for the creditor, uh, you utilize their capability to boost up their liquidity position for their depositor as well as their minority shareholders. So that is why regulator come up with this sort of intervention to restrict their unwillingness to pay their stakeholders. So however, so these all factors we can categorize if we see that, like if we just from last two slides discussion, if we just sum up, then what we can find, there are different factors affecting the credit rating, means willingness as well as the capability of the borrower. And we can summarize all these factors from two perspectives. One is a macro, means which are related with industry or the company, industry or the country. And another is in firm specific, like the business entities, which is called macro. And those factors, macro factors, again can be categorized from the qualitative and the quantitative. And similarly, the firm specific factors can be also categorized into qualitative and the quantitative, means non-financial, which we mention as a qualitative information. So if you see here the cross, if you consider the cross is a 20%, 25%, then I can say that in case of the macro level, most of the factors are the non-financial, majority of the land. Maybe it is not like we're not talking there was 70% of the macro information quality. This is a reason, like a reasonable estimation that the qualitative information is in the firm specific qualitative and quantitative information is in 50-50. But in case of macro, most of the cases we use the qualitative information for judging the country or global or the industry level. So let's think about a cement company's macro and the firm specific information. So if we look at here that like quantitative information is a market share, growth rate of the infrastructure investment and economic growth. These all are the quantitative factors, but the qualitative factor, which is a very important, like the tax policy. So what is the tax policy affect the cement company? Like if a cement company is listed in Bangladesh, then it will be under the 35% tax rate. But if it's a garments company, then what we can say, this is a 12% only interest rate. That means this qualitative factor is changing due to the change of the policy to industry. So in the farm specific factors, we can find that, like we all know that financial factors like liquidity, profitability, and solvency positions, these are the quantifiable, but the qualitative information is very important in here. What business strategy they have taken, what is their, who are managing, like we have mentioned, that what is their corporate governance, what is their succession plan, means as we all know that most of the companies are the family based business. So their management is the mostly family affiliated members or family loyal members are in the management. But if they don't have the management succession plan, this is really important factor for their repayment capability. If they appoint someone from their family who is not isn't capable enough, who doesn't have the enough training in on-job training or understanding of the business, it will be difficult for the company to run the business successfully and build the capability to repay. So now these are the factors that how these factors systematically interplay to affect the credit rating. Or in another way, from the credit rating agency perspectives or the credit assessment perspectives, we cannot deal each and every factors in abruptly. Like if we again look back in this structure, these are all fuzzy picture. Though we try to categorize, these are very much like scattered, but we have to come up with a conclusion in a systematic way. That's why these factors, how these factors interplay is very important. And the framework we may think here,
Can you see on the screen, Dr. Mamun?
economic analysis and industry analysis, means where the firm belongs and in which industry it is playing. Then with these two, combining these two, we can come up with or determine the business risks. And then with cash flow analysis, liquidity analysis, means all are the financial factors, and profitability and solvency analysis, we come up with the point of financial risks. So if we combine these two risks, then we will get the standalone rating, means what is the initial credit rating or the credit capability of the firm to repay the loan. So later we can incorporate other non-financial modifiers. For example, their corporate strategy, who are in management, governance, and after modifying these, we can come up with the final rating. Now, the modifiers can play both in a positive way and negative way as well. For example, if a company has a strong, like let's think this is a triple B, they got as a triple B rating. So if we found that like their corporate governance is very poor, they have a poor succession plan, then these non-financial factors indicates that though the company is performing now well, but in future it may have some trouble. Like as an entrepreneur, the first generation entrepreneur has done it very successfully, but we are predicting that the successors of their family is not enough to run his business. Simultaneously, company doesn't develop the professional management. So it indicates that the company, though is doing good, but it will be doing in bad in future. In another example we can put in here, that nature of industry is also a factor. Suppose a company which belongs to an industry is performing well, but in the future the industry is day by day is like going down due to like digital disruption. So if we predict that due to the digital disruption, the shifting of the industry focus, like the grocery business can be changed, the traditional retailing will be shifted in the coming days due to the digital disruption and the e-business expansion. So if any company involves in the traditional digital traditional retail business, so though it's doing good, but in future we are predicting that the company may not do. So in that case we may give the we may interrupt its we may downgrade its rating. So in that case, let's see how the different factors, are playing. So how the economic analysis and the industry analysis interplay, and we can determine the business risks. Let's see in the next step. So we first analyze the economy. For example, in the Bangladesh economy, economic indicators, most of the economic indicators are very good, and some are moderate, and some are poor as well. There is a few concern as well. So overall, we analyze that our economy indicator shows that the economic condition is good here. Not very good, not bad. So financial system, we found that like our analysis, there's a bank-based financial system. The banks are day by day becoming weaker due to their huge number of unbanked population, and performance of this non-performing loan is very high, almost in the 10%. Performance of the state banks are very poor, which are the major lion share, who has the lion share in the debt market. So overall, if we see that like our economy or country risk analysis, if we analyze all the factors in Bangladesh, we can see that the overall country risk is moderate. And if we look at the framework of credit risk, that's based on that credit risk table. So here we can identify that economic risk is moderate economic risk, or the country risk, based on the all factors which we consider for that. Now, if we shift focus on industry analysis, so this infrastructure is moderated, so this overall country risk is moderating. Yeah, if we look at here, the framework of the country risk, there's a business risk we can identify here as a moderate. It's a moderate. And if we go in the next slide, then there's a cement industry. As we are talking about cement industry, it is characterized by average expected growth is an 8 to 10%, though it was an 15%, and it's an 3 billion sales revenue in 2019, and large infrastructure project is taking, and more are commissioning in the future. And the total production capacity is almost 58 million, but interestingly, 43% is an overcapacity. Means they have established this due to their future demand. As a highly dependent on the imported raw material. And 5% income tax, advance income tax, in fact, and 3% source tax have newly imposed. So which is negatively counted, in fact, of the growth of the cement industry. And 81% market share held by 10 companies only out of 37. And declining trend of the stock market performance. Cement industry is not performing well. Their market capitalization is a declining trend for a couple of years. So these are the characteristics in there. So considering these characteristics, if we analyze all the factors, we draw in our analysis, we come up with that, like, yeah, next slide. Overall industry risk is high. So how do we conclude that overall industry risk is high? Based on the Porter's 5 force models, if we look at here, is competitive rivalry, because competition is heavily concentrated to the 10 company only. And the threat of new entrants, as it's a capital intensive investment is required, and there is a very strict environmental law for the companies like cement, and the large economic scale has already achieved, needs to be achieved to survive, and no fast mover advantage because there are well settled market players. And the threat of substitute product is very low because cement is used for the purposes which is a cement impact. Bargaining power of the suppliers is high because it significantly, like almost 90% of its raw material are imported, and only 2 companies produce their clinkers in Bangladesh. So switching cost is also high as it is an imported, raw materials are imported, and the product quality highly depends on the quality of raw materials, means that they cannot just import from here and there without ensuring the quality. But the bargaining power of the buyers is moderator. It's not too high. It's because of the high price sensitivity and the low switching cost, in fact. And another features is that bargaining position, their bargaining position of the buyer. Yes, bargaining position of the buyer, because government and the big construction company are the major consumer of the cement. So we got, if we go back in the country risk is a moderate, and industry risk is high for cement. So now if we apply the matrix, we found that the score is 4. So the scale of 5, score is 4 means let's say business risk is high. So if we go in the next, so we identified that for cement, for the cement industry, the business risk is high. So now if we proceed on that, yeah, the financial risks. So the prior slide, please. Yeah. Here's as we know, though this is not in our scope, but I want to show these are the typical elements of the financial risk analysis. Now, next. But one factor I want to highlight that when we are talking about the financial risk analysis, then it's the issue is that it is the whole entity or a project or a division, which is very important, because the overall company's cash flow and a project cash flow is not same, or as a new project's cash flow is not same. The cash flows are the different, and the different risks and cost of capital as well. So particular project, if a company takes a new project, even it's an expansion project, is cost or is risks and the prior ones risks are not same, because the capital structure and the net working capital are also different for the project. In most of the cases we can see, and the different, as a result, that individual project is, though by the way, though a company is an accumulation of the individual project, but every individual project has its own performance indicators, its own value and own profitability as well. So that is why when we will conduct the financial risks, we have to be very cautious about the financial risks of a project and financial risks of a company. Definitely, the financial risks of a company is works as an indicator or considered as an element to assess the risks of an individual project. Yeah. But the problem could be if we just make the project we treat as a project as a part of a company and we just simply consider as an overall, then the problem will be created that we will underestimating the risk of bad project or overestimating of a risk of a good project. Means a project is good compared to a company, but we may dilute it with the company's risk level. On the other hand, we may also underestimate or overestimating the overall risk of a company, because company is an accumulation of all projects. If we predict that, or if we take a project which has low risk compared to the company, so the low risk project will reduce the overall company's projects. But if we dilute it rather than identifying it specifically, then underestimating and overestimating of the risk of individual company can be happen. So that's why firstly the project should be evaluated with its own merit. Later the company support can be considered. Means to what extent company is capable to create a synergy of an individual project. So the company in our example, after analyzing the financial risks, because I'm not going in detail of that, we found that the risk level is low. Means score we found which is more than 75 but less than 80. So we identified that the risk is low. So now we got the business risks which was moderate, which was high, the business risks we analyzed. And the financial risks we found is a low. So now if we use this matrix to determine the risk level, that's a BBB level. So this is a standalone, this is an approach of determining the standalone credit rating. And next one. Yeah. Now let's look at how the final rating is come up with of our process. Yes, the country risk is moderate, industry risk is high, so overall risk is high. So cash flow, liquidity, profitability, combining with that, we get as a financial risk, which is low. Combining these two, our matrix, rating determination matrix shows that the company should get BBB. But what other non-financial factors have been considered in here? So we found that the company has a very strong group support. It's a very reputed company having some projects like LNG, which is very successful. So it has a very established brand image. So one of the fast moving company, first mover advantage they have, strong selling and distribution network because they have LNG distribution and other distribution network as well, which creates a synergy which has strengthened it. And skilled management, they have developed the skilled management and very strong government liaison, because government and the construction company are the major consumer of the cement. Family ownership, as this is a very concentrated ownership company, we took it as a positive element of the family ownership, because if they do good, the family will be benefited. Do bad, the family will be sufferer. So family has also the concern, which has a very strong group as well. As a result, we have uploaded one notch of the grade. And the final rating we found A-, that's an above a BBB. Just one notch we have uploaded, considering all these very strong factors having some recent concern in the cement industry. Yeah. Then if we go for the next one, like an RNG company. We find also similar type of analysis if we draw the conclusion here. And again, let's look at a non-financial factor here. The company standalone, we found triple B again, but the modifier we found, we checked that the company is doing business well, as you find that financial risk is moderator, and the company's profitability is also very stable, and it also gets some incentive as well. Like garments industry, as I mentioned you that it enjoys the lowest tax rate compared to 35%. It enjoys only 12%. So it is a very favorable environment for the RNG sector. They also get the tax like cash incentive for their export. So in spite of that, when the company has a tendency of irregularity in the payment, it may have the two reasons. Either they are not willing to pay, or they have the poor liquidity management. So considering this factor, we also found that they are highly levered short-term capital structure. It's almost 1.28 times of their liability, which indicates, which pushed us to come up with the final rating, considering all these factors. Double B minus means we penalize 2 notch down. Means from investment grade it shifted speculative grade, though it is marginally below to the investment grade, but it is a top grade of the speculation. But the penalty was severe due to the non-financial factors, because willingness, as I mentioned, so willingness is matters, and the poor management is also a matter. And the next case, if we move forward, is a jute company, and this is a government-owned company. And what happens in here is business risk is moderator, but financial risk is very high, because as that this is a typical state-owned company, there is a conflict of interest is very high, and management inefficiency can be also observed. As a result, they're showing very poor financial performance. And the standalone rating we found is a B, because it has a moderating business risks, and our matrix is showing that the standalone risks rating will be B. So modifier plays is in here, as is a government support entity, and government has the stable outlook, means the country credit rating of Bangladesh is double B minus, but which is a consistent, and the outlook is stable, though recently it has been negative because of the pandemic. And the raw material is very available, because Bangladesh is the highest jute cultivation country. So considering these two factors, we come up with, and yes, another reason, low capacity utilization, because due to their inefficiency of management, their capacity utilization is very poor, because state-owned company, they thought that without performing, our job is certain, and there are a lot of bureaucracy. That's why inefficiency has been escalated due to the reason consistent low capacity utilization. In spite of that, like green product has a huge demand around the world nowadays. So considering these factors, plus and minus, the final rating. So we have escalated, means we have rewarded, because as the government support is in there, so that's why we rewarded, because government has some guarantee of payment, of repayment. Now, if we go for another case, it's a manufacturing company, and if we see in here, there's a business risk is low, because this manufacturing company is a battery manufacturing company. It is producing This market is very growing due to the emerging need of the vehicle battery and other batteries because of expansion of the infrastructure and the economic growth, the demand of the battery, and its financial risk is also moderate from our analysis. Yeah. So the standalone risk is a triple B plus. It shows our risk. But the modifier it plays the role as a non-financial factors. That's a strong group support, but it has the raw material risks because most of the raw materials are imported. Due to the reason it is highly exposed to the foreign exchange rates, and the price is fluctuating in the raw material market. And the weak, sorry, let's say weak WEAK, weak liquidity position, poor liquidity position we found, though their financial risk is moderating. So as a result, their rating has been dropped from triple B to sorry, double B minus. So next case. Another interesting case is a very good company. Is in 2013, it has the rating of double A minus. Double A minus. No, it's a prior one. But look at the point. Yes, prior slide, please. Double A minus. Yeah, double A minus. So it is gradually, consistently, it is going down. The question is then why it is going down. There are some non-financial factor play a very important role. Next one, please. The company, which is a market leading, is a very good brand in Bangladesh, in the battery industry. In fact, it also belongs to battery. And the total asset in USD is in 68 million, and the total revenue is 50 million. It's a family-owned and managed farm. Means its top management is occupied by the most of the family members. In fact, the two key business strategies fail. They have existing plant for meeting the local demand, and they almost had more than 75% of the battery market in Bangladesh. But they diversify their related business, and they want to develop, they want to manufacture a battery, and they want to export in a certain market, certain target market. But unfortunately, they invested too much compared to their existing operation and existing capacity of the asset. As I mentioned, that the new project, though it's a battery project, but it's a new project. And due to highly levered investment, what has been happened, that individual project's financial risks has superseded the company's overall risks and makes the company's financial risks is escalated. But the problem is that the demand side has not responded the way they were expecting. Means that the targeted market is becoming slower because of those countries' economic slowdown. And when those economies were going back over the period, and they again tried to like enter into the market, meanwhile other competitors have also entered into there. That's why the new project was seen is a big challenge, and due to its high leverage, their financial repayment obligation was very high, and his existing operation needs to take the pressure of that excess loan. And another unrelated diversification was taken by the company, because in the early of the last decade, like around 2012, in fact 2010 and so on, when the new government came, they have taken initiatives for boosting the power generation capacity, because Bangladesh was severely suffering from the power generation, the huge shortage of power. And in these cases, government was offering the public-private sector the quick rental power generation project. And all the influential companies were trying to bidding it to take the advantage of the quick rental power contract. And this company has also won the contract. And the advantage of the quick rental company was very lucrative as well, because there was a certain, which in fact happened in the cases, there was a certain power purchase agreement which was very favorable to the investors, because government want to meet the gap of the power very quickly. So considering this factor, the company has taken the project, and which was also is a highly levered, as well as it's a very high project in terms of the total asset. It requires almost 50% of their existing operation assets they need to invest in here. But the problem is that the company doesn't have that experience to set up and manufacture, generate the power. Because as we all know that power sector especially depends on its infrastructure and generation technology they are using. Unfortunately, this company appointed a contractor or the infrastructure company who are using the reused equipments for power generation company. As a result, the quick rental company couldn't generate the power for a single day. So this is a huge blow happens to this for the company. In spite of these two failure of the strategy, the company is still holding almost 54% to 60%, is fluctuating battery market in Bangladesh. But it has weakened severely his repayment capability day by day. And most interestingly thing is that in spite of this downtrend of their business, they consistently hike their salary for the family affiliated executives. And this is very high salary compared to the market average salary they draw. And as I mentioned that, they had also the operating cash flow. They had also the weaker operating cash flows as well. So next slide. So now let's look at another non-financial factors, how it plays in the Nepalese and what is the reaction of the Nepalese credit rating company. If you look at this screen, you can find that most of the companies got the negative implication, means their rating, they have given the rating, but though the rating has been already issued, but most of the companies are under the negative observation, means in the coming days their rating, means their debt repayment capability will be weakened. Why? We all know that due to the pandemic it will be weaker. And as the Nepalese, and this is not surprising in fact, because Nepali economy is significantly dependent on the tourism industry. Here we can find the hotel industry and the steel and the spinning mills, which is also in the negative implications. But interestingly, one company, if we find here that Cement Private Limited, the care rating is giving the reaffirmative, means they make it as a stable, they do not make it as a down. So the COVID-19 pandemic is affecting all the companies, like steel company, that is also a manufacturing company, and which is also related with the infrastructure development. and hotel industry, which is affected by the means their credit rating is negatively credit rating or credit risk is becoming higher, and credit rating is negatively affected due to the pandemic. But look at the point. This please can you go back the MB cement? Yeah, here. But COVID-19 is not affecting other in like embasement in the similar way like other industry as well. Now, why? Why? What was the CARES observations in that cases? Can you go in the next slide, please? Yeah. Here, the CARE is identifying these reasons, these non-financial factors for make it stable. Like this is that they have the established track record of operation and strong promoter. Means the promoter of this company have a very good track record. Part of MB group of the company, which is a very renowned and stable company as per their analysis, and the experienced management team in the related field. And moderate financial and operational performance of the company. These are financial and moderate capital debt service coverage indicators. But the above three factors are exclusively non-financial factors. And if we go in the next part, so what are the weaknesses they consider to make it stable? Lack of backward integration and the raw material price volatility risks, weak capital intensive nature of operation, and exposure to volatile interest rate, okay, and presence in high fragmented and the competitive nature of the cement industry. So these two set of factors they have considered, and in spite of considering these two set of factors, in spite of the COVID-19 like context, the rating company suggested the stable rating, means stable credit risks, stable level of the credit risks of this company. Now next one. So this is a survey result. Like then when we consider the non-financial factors, do we consider the non-financial factors, individual non-financial factors equally important for every industry or every company in the same industry? So prior discussion says that no, it is not in fact. So now let's see, this is the survey in fact, and the survey participants were the senior rating analyst or credit risk analyst, but the sample is not too big, it is around 10, but they are very experienced and all are the team leader of 10 to 12 analysts. So their observation is reflecting that. Here I'm putting only the top two factors they consider, like FMCG, the two non-financial factors they consider for assigning the final rating, which is a market position of that company and the supply chain. And the next one, for the power, the PPPA, power purchase agreement, and the power generation infrastructure. Bank for corporate governance and the risk management, means corporate governance treated as a top factor and the risk management is the second one. And the SME, the character of the owner. Character of the owner means here his willingness and his capability of the business, as well as here not only the character to repayment, here the character means his entrepreneurial character. Here we mention, and the nature of business, what type of business they are doing. And the pharmaceuticals, production portfolio, what are the drugs they are manufacturing and what is their marketing strategy. And RMG, what is the compliance? Because the buyer, the global retailer, consider the compliance significantly and the state of the global economy. like the COVID-19 or any global, even in 2008, there is a recession, which also affects the uh, revenue generating and the cash generating capability of RMG. So cement, the production capacity. So suddenly a company get as a small company with the government liaison may get as a huge supply contract, but due to their lack of capacity, they may be unable to pay. So it is very important to have the production capacity. There will be production capacity, and what is the branding? Because in Bangladesh market, as it's a very highly competitive market at this moment, so branding is also a factor they consider. So from these survey results, what we can find that if we look at the all top factors, which are not same in industry to industry, in most of the cases we can find it different. Means the different for analyzing or assigning the credit rating or determining the credit risks, the priority of the factor are different to the different industry. So it varies to industry in terms of the priority. But it doesn't mean that the factor is ignored completely. For example, the corporate governance. This is equally important for all industry, though it's lessly important in the SME, but it is significantly important in case of bank, or it has been significantly considered by the analyst. So, but the corporate governance is very important for other industry as well, like the pharma industry, like the cement industry. This is also very important. So the next one. So this is the summary note. Let's come up with what we have discussed. So we try to identify the credit risks, that is a willingness and the capability of repayment the loan to the lenders by borrowers. So it depends on the capability and the willingness. So later we try to identify the credit rating is a systematic process of incorporating following factors. It's a business risk based on the country or economic risks and industry risks. Means where it plays is game. And financial risks based on its financial performance indicators and other non-financial performance have been considered as a modifier. So combining all these, the credit risks has been assessed and to determine that what are the possible risks of the borrower to repay the loan, a particular loan. Now here one factor I want to highlight before going to the next level. This is one of the aspects. In fact, suppose we assess that a company has a rating is a BBB, so his credit risk is moderate credit risk. Now interestingly, when the company will get that loan, getting this loan, what will be the post consequence? Means high risk, high return. So when a company having the AAA rating, means very low credit risks, then they borrow the loan, they will have the lesser interest rate as per the rule. So lesser interest rate means his obligation will be lesser. But when we found a company is taking borrowing, having the higher credit risks, his borrowing rate will be high. Higher borrowing rate will escalate its fixed obligation, which will increase its risk further. So this is another factor, non-financial factor, we also need to consider. That is like post-risk assessment factor we may consider as a non-financial factors. And I think this is one of the very critically critical consideration for making the overall ultimate judgment about the credit risks of individual borrower. And the most important is that uh, the level of impact of an individual factor on credit risks is varied. It can be varied, means same factor may not play in the same way at the same degree. It can be varied country to country, industry to industry, company to company in the same industry, and company to company in the same industry but different countries, like the garments industry in Bangladesh. It enjoys the lowest tax rate. It doesn't mean that garments industry in USA will enjoy the same tax rate. The same industry, same industry, but is a different country, may play as a different role. Similarly, a particular company is operating in Bangladesh, and the same country is operating in Nepal, and the same country is operating in another Western economy, like in Europe, like it operating in France. The individual factor can be varied as well. For example, recently, the Bangladesh has a restriction in for any foreign company in Bangladesh, that if a company invests in Bangladesh as a joint venture, then it will not it will not reinvest, it will not borrow any amount after 3 years, particularly for the working capital for foreign borrow, unless the permission of the government, government regulatory body, that is Bangladesh. Now, interesting is that what is the logic behind that? One of the reason was that if the company, foreign company operating in Bangladesh is allowed to borrow, then they may set set an agreement with the parent company loan, that they may charge as an above market average interest rate, by which they may expatriate the foreign currency for Bangladesh. So to protect the foreign currency pressure, this restriction has been imposed. But due to the recent reason, but by the way, the same reason, same impose may not be happen in other countries. So as a result, the same company operating in Bangladesh and another country can vary. Though recently, due to meeting the liquidity problem, Bangladesh Bank has dismantled this, or has been not dismantled. They have eased the conditions that yes, for this crisis period, they can borrow from parent company, even their operation has been crossed 3 years since their inception. So company to company in the same special context, like the pandemic is affecting, COVID-19 is affecting the whole company, it's a whole economy. But in the first quarter, we can experience that Bangladesh has exported in USA, RMG export in the USA has been the highest growth. Even Bangladesh is the third, Bangladesh in terms of exporting RMG to Bangladesh is the third position. But its growth rate in the first quarter, even during the pandemic, is the highest, crossing the China and so what does it indicate? The COVID-19 is not affecting the export of Bangladesh to USA in the same way the pandemic is affecting the other industry. And let me give you another example. Like recently, the medicine for the treatment of COVID has been manufactured, has been allowed to manufacture in the pharmaceutical companies in Bangladesh. So what has been happening? This is one factor, but beside that, the COVID-19 has not, by the way, the recent survey shows that almost like 10 to 20% revenue will be reduced for all the companies. But the garments, but the pharmaceutical industry in Bangladesh, we experienced that our sales for the pharmaceutical product is not reduced. So that is why our concluding remark is that the level of impact of an individual factor on credit risk is varied. Yes, that's the next one. So the deep insight is required. Deep insight is required for individual factors for determining the credit risk. Now we can go for the question answer session if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Mamun. So we open the floor for question. Can you please type in your question in the Q&A box, please?
Is it compulsory in Bangladesh to do credit rating prior to financing? In fact, okay. In fact, it has an indirect reason for which, in fact, is important for credit rating. Because Bangladesh is a bank-based economy and most of the borrowing is from the bank. So it is essential for bank to maintain its capital adequacy ratio. Means when bank put any fund to any borrower, then bank needs to assign a risk level which is decided by the Bangladesh bank. So if it is unrated, then Bangladesh bank consider the loan as a 150% risk, which will reduce its credit capital adequacy ratio. So this is one of the indirect reasons. That's why bank makes it mandatory for the client to do the rating. And yes, Bangladesh Bank is the central bank. Here is a central bank like Nepal, NRB in Nepal. So every proposal is to be credit rating at Bangladesh, or some ceiling is imposed for credit rating. Yes, every proposal should have the credit rating. In fact, to some extent, it's a choice of the bank as well. There is no specific ceiling, but it varies to bank. Banks takes the policies. But generally, all large loans, bank doesn't allow any large loan. But we found some cases that for SME, though Bangladesh Bank is central bank is highly encouraging for the SME rating. Even a specific rating company has been approved for the SME rating, but there is no guideline that the specific mandatory requirement. How can we call the current banking model at Nepal after this? Wait. Okay. So the main concern is that here to me, the first point I must consider is that the banking industry as a whole will be in trouble. There is no questions in that cases, but the question is that how can they survive? In fact, two questions in these cases: how can they survive in this crisis, and how can they take the preparation to boost their business in the post-pandemic situation? Like in case of bank, what is the most critical factor of bank? The most critical factor of the bank is to lend the money and get back the money. Lend the money to the basket from where they will get back that money. Now, the pandemic situation has created a concern that can the bank find the good projects at this moment? Second is that where they will put the money, can the existing lender will be able to get back the money or not? So that is why banks in Nepal or in Bangladesh is a similar institutional structure or setup is very important to find the new potential projects. Like, let me give you an example. In Nepal, we found that like almost 10% of their GDP contribution is from tourism sector. In near future, tourism sector will be severely negatively affected. But infrastructure projects can be bounced back immediate of the post-crisis period because there can be few more government investment. So banks, a good bank having the good corporate governance should choose the right project. And simultaneously, they should also help the existing, like if they have the huge SME loan, then what will be happening? SME sector will be severely affected. In that case, bank may come up with some innovation and collective effort so that the less harm can be happen to the SMEs, but they may give the business support to the SMEs so that they can also survive. They can give an financial liquidity support as well, so they can survive as well. So, overall, the bank is in a risk, but overall banking governance system should be strengthened because there is at this moment there is no scope of giving any bad loan further. And simultaneously, the existing loan recovery policy, company can be like banking industry can be flexible in that respect. And giving emphasis, it has a country role as well, giving emphasis on the sector which are less vulnerable due to the pandemic. Like as I mentioned, is the infrastructure sector in Nepal. But if giving more focus on the immediate focus or the short-term focus on the tourism sector. And another last point I must point it out for that, it should not be given too much. It should not be the short-term impact should not be overestimated, and simultaneously long-term impact should not be underestimated for the banking industry particularly. And what is the weightage assigned to the computing credit risks by CRA? What is the weightage assigned for computing? I'm a bit confused about what is the weightage assigned for computing credit risks by CRA, for which can you just clarify it? Means which weightage you are talking about? What benefits the customer gets after credit rated deposit despite benefit a customer get after credit rated despite of interest rate in lower side of the curve. Okay. What benefits the customer get after credit rating despite of interest rate in the lower side from the government? Yes, there are few advantages like credit rating. A customer having the credit rating. One is that like it will boost up the confidence of the lender. If the lender is confident, then it will build also the good relationship with the borrower, because lender always try to identify, one of the major responsibility of the lender to identify and to sort out the good lenders. from good borrowers from the bad borrowers. So when the lender will be in a good position to identify that who are the good borrower, or what are the specific position of a borrower, then it will be easier for the lender for making the decision. So this is one of the non-financial benefits, I think, regardless of the interest rate. And another issue is that loan structuring, the loan covenant is very important here. So when lender will find that the credit rating is very high, credit risk is low, then the loan covenant will be a bit flexible. But if you find that a high credit rating, a low credit rating, high credit risks, then the covenant and the loan structuring will be different. So the loan structuring, to what extent loan structuring will be flexible and in favor of the customer or not, it also one of the advantages the credit rating can give. So are we discussing the Volta battery in present? Oh no, I'm talking about is a battery, as this is a confidential information, this I'm not mentioning, but it's a market leader in Bangladesh, the battery company I was talking. How can we assess the willingness of the borrower to repay in MS? Where is the most looked after by a single person, single family? Okay. Willingness of the borrower, yes, like even is a micro cases, their track record is very important. Unless someone is a new entrepreneur, that what kind of business they are doing, and addition is that like what sort of tendency of their approach of doing business and dealing with the banks is very important. And that single person or the single family's track record is easily identified, because even if they do not do business, before doing business, they have their personal dealing and transactions. So if we look at over there, we can find it. Like recently, similar case has been happened. A SME, in fact, is a medium steel manufacturing company. We found that they have the core. They have not very strong the liquidity, but later we found that they have a very and the banking transaction is not too much, as it's a small medium steel company, so they skip some banking transaction as well. But later when we explored the individual family owners or shareholders accounts, we found huge cash deposit over there. So this ability of and the good willingness to dealing, even they took some personal loan and they repay, their repayment track is also very good. And how do bank allocate provision on credit finance? Okay, so here, like when they found, because when bank gives the like loan to any individual, it particularly decided what will be the provisioning process. It is decided by the central bank. Like what happens in case of Bangladesh recently, the provision was 3 months. Like if there is a 3 months requirement provision, but recently due to giving some advantages that it has been flexible up to the 9 months. So generally the bank is confined the provisioning which is related with the central bank's requirement. And the next question is checking capabilities and the willingness of the borrower with paying. Letting both are done on basis of the past and the current scenario, where there is always remain the possibility of the borrower being default with the reason of contingent event which will arise in future contingency. Thus, what factor can be considered for the same to overcome the possibility? Yes, though we consider the past factor, particularly the financial factors, but this is a futuristic analysis. As I mentioned that, even we consider if the company's rating is fallen, means it's a poor rating, if it takes the loan based on that poor rating, what will be the consequence of getting the loan at a higher interest rate? We also consider that factor. So this is futuristic analysis in fact. And when dealing with SME loans, what have our own credit calculation sheet? Yes, in even like Nepal, in Bangladesh, government like central bank has a prescribed sheet. So this is the internal credit rating, as you also mentioned here. But when credit rating company does the rating, it is their choice. They may also consider those factors at a minimum level or come up with a more stringent methodology for assigning or evaluating the credit worthiness of the SMEs. Provides loan after borrowers make default. Does bank provides loan after borrower makes default in loan repayment? You know, this is one of the very normal context in the emerging economy particularly. If someone defaults, then question is the why someone defaults. Like due to the pandemic, as a good company can be loan default, but is it because of his bad business in the normal situation, or it is his willingness, or does it or is it his track record permits that he's a continuous defaulter? So this factor has also considers. Moreover, whether the default in loan payment, borrower will be eligible or not, it is also a concern of regulators as well. For example, recently, almost more than $12 billion stimulus package has been announced in Bangladesh. And at the first stage, Bangladesh Bank issued a circular that no default loan means loan borrower with the default loan will be eligible to enjoy that stimulus package. Later, they have made it flexible. They come up with some conditions that defaulter will be eligible. So it varies case to case, and particularly one important question we have to ask that why someone is in default. Is it as an unusual reason, or it is due to his consistent business poor performance, or his tendency of not repaying the loan? Does credit rating disclose any other aspects other than the probability of the default of the client's capacity to repay? You know, credit rating is an opinion. It gives the opinion based on the whole analysis. And yes, credit rating disclose the information, detailed information, what they have analyzed as per the elements we have shown in their country risks, business risks, industry risks. They go in detail analysis and they have the prescribed format to share the information. And in conclusion, they give their opinion with the rationale that why they are thinking in that way. So next one is, okay. Is it feasible to conduct the credit rating for lending in SMEs? Yes, it's a concern. But again, it is sometimes some banks does it because of their capital adequacy requirement. regulator like central bank in Bangladesh has says that if any SME loan is not rated, then risk weight will be 120%. So some banks who has the 70% of the SME loan, if the 70% of the SME loan are not rated, then what will be happen? But definitely it increases the cost of fund as well for the cases of the SME rating. So there must have as an trade-off position they should come, but it requires for the bank, and particularly it requires for the bank, which also depends to what extent the bank depends on is loan portfolio captures the share of the SME. And what is the status of rating in the microfinance institution of Bangladesh? It is mandatory for the credit rating. Okay, we like in CRISL in Bangladesh deals as a good number of microfinance institutions in Bangladesh. In fact, the microcredit concept is very established in Bangladesh. Like there are two giants, as the BRAC and the Grameen Bank are the leading microfinance, and the ASHA are the microfinance institutions in here. Yes, it is again, there are some requirement, like so as a donor gives the fund or they wants to go for borrowing, then there are some requirement that for getting the loan, and then they use that fund. So that is why it is to some extent it is mandatory. Those indirectly mandatory, because when you go for from the lender, so lender capital adequacy is an element or is a consideration for which that you need to go for the credit rating. If possible, your thought of impact of the pandemic in the essential banking sector. In the country like Bangladesh, where like still 20% people are under the poverty line and almost 40% people under the modest poverty line. So in that cases, microfinance is a very important factor, but for the short term, microfinance institution will get the negative outlook, but in the long term, they will again come back. So how much significant are the cost of getting one's company's credit rated? Is it pragmatic or justified for the micro SMS business to incur the cost? Yes, it's a concern for the micro business for going with the credit rating. But as there is no credit scoring system, individual credit scoring system, credible individual credit scoring system, if it has been developed in the country-wise, like every citizen will have a credit score, then it will be not required in fact, but definitely it bears or it increases the cost. Next one is that how much significant are the cost of getting yes. Okay, so in Nepalese banking industry, major financing are done without credit rating from the independent agencies, securities providers. Though in the absence of credit ratings from the independent agency, how could we assess the quality of borrower? Here I see that in Nepalese major finance done with the credit rating from the independent agencies, and financing depends on the securities protocol, though the absence of credit rating from independent agencies. Yes, the bank can borrow it, but you know when bank can assess it, because as per the guideline of the central bank to the internal credit rating to determine it, but there is a conflict of interest in that case. Bank does the business with the depositor. So to what extent a loan decision will be taken fairly or like unbiasedly, that is a concern of how, to what extent as a like let's think in that way, the bank has a target of giving a loan, because if they don't give the loan, they cannot expand their business. So banking decision makers or the loan process, or particularly the loan decision makers, investment decision makers, is dealing with the fund of the depositors. So how fairly they can take, just to show that like their business is growing. So this conflict of interest is a concern in that respect. So is your opinion, what is the best time to perform risk identification? Definitely before the lending, and definitely it should be followed up from a particular time interval, because things are changing rapidly. As I mentioned in the Nepal cases, we found that though they identified the risks earlier, and now they are giving the negative outlook considering the current situation. More than 40% of the customers still out of the banking channel, and the government is launched various schemes for being. Also, there is a large amount of informal and the slowdown economy. Do you think this making credit rating compulsory for the small borrowers will deprive the small borrowers from the formal banking channel? Most of the countries facing the more or less thing. Yes, I do agree with you that this is a concern that, but without any process of identifying the credit risks, the whole credit market can be the market without tracking is riskiness. Okay, so this is also a concern, like if we completely ignore it. Rather, we have to come up with a solution to build up the individual credit score development, by which it will reduce our pressure, particularly for the SME banking rating. How can we convince the client to do credit rating of their company, as the cost has to be bared by the client? Yes, it should be treated as a cost of their project. Like if they go for the rating, it is also helpful for the client as well, because client can also understand what is their whether they are in a capability, they have their capability to expand a project or not. So that is why these are the points, because from the client perspective, from the borrower perspectives, because credit rating comes from the business analysis. Okay, so they also get an understanding, getting some lot of clues by which they can also be in a good position to judge his financial capabilities, capability to borrow or not. So this is one of the factor they may consider, client can consider. And another factor is that if the client treated that, okay, if I want to borrow $100, so $2, for example, is the credit rating fees, then the borrower should assess it, or the client should assess it from the point of view of $102, including other interest. So if they consider is a whole package, including other costs, then I think these two factors can help them. One is that client can get the independent analysis about his business, and which will helpful to understand his own capacity of borrowing, as well as they may treat it as a project cost. So how frequently does banks request credit rating of the customer? Generally annually. It is generally during loan renewal and investments. Yes. And have the banks ask his client to get his credit rating reward to evaluate? Okay. Yes. It is in fact the obligation. It is in fact the obligation on practice of the credit rating company to review the rating, even in the pandemic. No, bank doesn't ask specifically for a specific context. Because when the credit rating company has assigned a rating, then they also follow that whether the rating we are providing is an outlook is stable or declining, or what is the transition. So it is the responsibility of the rating company to disclose it publicly. Inspection, review, rating. The rating is on reassessment downgraded. Okay. How genuine? Yes. Yes, this is a big questions like how genuine or what is the predictability, because credit rating companies are also not out of conflict of interest, because in many cases like clients may come to us and says that we want this rating for getting that loan regardless of my capability. Now it depends on how much credible credit rating we are to assess it. Okay. And this is a worldwide concern about the role of the credit rating company. What happens in case of many good company or many good going company later found that as a very poor financial position, though they were good rated. So there was a credit shopping tendency of some credit rating company, which indeed create this sort of problem. Is there credit rating company to update or revise a certain interval of time? Yes, because the use of dual balance sheet providing us. Okay, when the credit rating is or credit risk is assessed, it's an wholesome assessment. Yes, we know that one account is prepared for tax purposes, another account is for the management account. So we consider all the factors for determining their credit worthiness. Yes, bank. This is also the judgment of the bank that when they will get the credit rating and credit rating report, they will also have the internal analysis. So they may map the external credit rating with the internal rating analysis. So as per the circular new rely on finding the minimum amount, the lender should make the credit rating of borrower from the license rating agency. This is one of the factors, as I mentioned, that the central bank has always the concern, because if a lending bank gives a loan without rating, means the risk is not identified. So this is a concern, number one. Second one is that is it enough to analyze the borrowers to the lend? Yes, is the borrowers, as I mentioned, that like when bank needs to take a decision, price a loan, they not only consider the credit risks, they need to consider other factors as a whole about the project viability. But interestingly, external credit rating is a good external credit rating company. Consider all the factors, though they give the opinion based on the credit risks, but a good rating company analyzes business, analyzes context of business, its economy, so its strategy, competitiveness. So these all are good inputs the bank can consider or reconfirm to make their decisions. So how do we do credit rating of a newly? Yes, it is a concern that newly established projects, the first factor we may consider, this newly established project for which sector, means what type of project it is going to be, who are taking this project as a very important initiative. Do they have, like I gave an example, a company who would like to go for a power sector, quick rental power sector, but they don't have the experience. They are taking a project as a new project which requires significantly high fund compared to their existing internal capacity of the fund. Third point is that how much prospective of the project, or what are the completion risk was ignored in that case. So these factors is also considered in fact. And once the credit rating is accomplished for a specific company, then are the rating companies are discharged any monitoring function for the companies in future, and in future are the rating agencies are alarming to the stakeholder with the respect of the concerned company. So in that cases, like yes, the one of the responsibility of the credit rating company is to assess, give the opinion, and disclose it publicly, and follow it. So not only disclose, like the rating has been issued in the January. Suppose a company which is a hotel company, like 5-star hotel, who has a very good credit rating company, it's a AAA, suppose. It's a very high level of the credit risk. But in the last 3 months, they don't get any like guests. So credit rating company should come up with an observation that, and as I mentioned that what should be happen? The credit rating company give a note that we are not considering that the AAA will be stable, it will be decreasing. But it doesn't mean that immediately they will change the rating. They will give the initial stage observation. If it continues longer, then they, when they will go for further, then they will evaluate and come up with that. But this is a good information for all stakeholders. Yes, I think I come up with the question. Anything more? I have already responded all the questions. So any further clarification is required. So from the question, like I was noticing, one of the major concerns, if I've identified, the first concern is that like SME rating and its cost. Second one is that like bank borrowing, should bank borrowing go for, and it's the credibility of the credit rating was another concern. And the third point I was observing from the most of the questions, that is what is the use of the credit rating? Is it really useful? Okay. So from the 3 points, I can draw my conclusion that first of all, SME still is required to some extent due to the of individual trading system in the country like South Asian countries or emerging economies. So second one is that is a bank, yes, bank should consider the credit rating due to maintaining its credit rating requirement as per the Basel III particularly. So this is a requirement for which bank is always interested to pursue it. And one of the participants has mentioned that when this why regulator, central bank is coming up with their notification as well, that up to a certain level of the high loan, they should go for the credit rating. And third point is that how much credible the rating, it really depends on that how much credible, how much capable the credit rating agency or credit rating company itself, what is the credibility of them, and what methodology they are applying, what is their track record in fact, like what is the default rate of the prior rating. Okay, like in Bangladesh, we are estimating that our default rate of SMEs is 3 to 3.5%. Now, if we found that 3 to 3.5%, if individual rating companies clients default rate is 10%, means their credit rating credibility is lower. So there are some judgment and there are some like instrument as well to assess the credibility of the credit rating agencies as well. So I think this is from all from my side.
Thank you.
If
Thank you very much.
there are no more questions, then we can conclude the session.
Dr. Mamun, thank you very much on behalf of all of us here.
Hello.
Dr. Mamun, thank you very much.
Hello.
On behalf of all of us. Hello. 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 Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Dr. Venkatesh.
Okay, Dr. Mamun, thank you very much on behalf of all of us. And my friends in NMB, thank you for a wonderful interactive session again. So let me briefly mention the purpose of this session. So it's not about credit rating agencies per se, but the approach they take to including non-financial indicators in the credit risk assessment. So of course, the practices of the agency can also be internalized in the practices of a bank or any other lending institution. We had several questions about SME, and next week's webinar will be exclusively about SME credit risk assessment and monitoring. We will have an expert from one of the largest lenders in Sri Lanka for the SME and micro sector. And you can expect that in that session, there will be very extensive discussion also about non-financial factors that go into the SME risk assessment and monitoring. So tomorrow, we will meet in groups. So I have sent a message to all of you, starting 8 o'clock tomorrow, 15 minutes for each group. And I will have some guidance on the loan structuring exercises that we will go through. And we will have a power project to evaluate later in the week. So I see you in groups tomorrow, starting 8 o'clock Nepal time. Yeah, and Dr. Phuong will send you the invitation shortly. So have a good lunch and thank you so much. So see you tomorrow.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Mamun, for joining us today to share your knowledge and experience. Thank you, everyone, for sending your questions today. We hope you find this webinar useful, and we'll see you again on our next webinar next Saturday. So thank you once again and have a good weekend. And the recording of webinar will be posted on the course website. Thank you very much.